Hey everyone, so it's Hearth and welcome back to my channel. So on today's video, I'm going to be talking about the tools that I use in witchcraft and why I don't use a lot of the more traditional tools that a lot of other practitioners do. So a lot of the time I get questions from beginners which usually go along the lines of, what tools do I need to start practicing witchcraft? And I usually give them all the same answer. You don't need any. And it's still true to this day. When I was a beginner a reasonably long time ago, I thought the same as a lot of other beginners do, that you need every tool imaginable to be able to practice witchcraft. I have a lot of books up here that give you list after list after list of tools that you need to successfully practice witchcraft, and I don't use practically any of them, and I still have successful magical practices just as a lot of other people do who also don't use a lot of magical tools. So I know that if you're a beginner looking at this, you've probably heard a lot about the immense number of tools you have to practice witchcraft. So today I'm going to be talking about the tools that I use and the tools I don't use and why I use and don't use them. So the first tool that a lot of people seem to be told that they need is a wand. Now I am in the process of making a video about wands. If I have put it up at this point, it will be in the description box. If I haven't, it is coming soon, I promise. But wands are typically used as a tool to direct energy. And a lot of people, especially beginners, come into witchcraft and magic and they think that you have to have a wand because of all of these fantasy movies and shows that kind of portray witches as having to have a wand. And although I have a good few wands in my collection, this is actually one of my first wands. This was my second ever wand. I don't actually use them all that frequently. And that is for a very good reason, in my opinion, is that I don't really need them, and a lot of the spell work that I do is kind of on a whim. I don't spend a huge amount of time doing ceremonial magic now. I used to when I was first practicing, so a lot of the ones that I have vary in age from kind of 2005 to about 2014. Within that space of time, I was doing a lot of higher magic, a lot of ceremonial magic. I was practicing Wicca at that point. I do not practice Wicca anymore. And I was mainly driven by ceremonial workings, higher magic. And I used a lot of wands, and I used them very frequently as an energy director. And although I can still work energy through a wand, that's not changed. They are still a tool that I can use really easily. I just don't need them anymore because I don't plan my workings like I used to. I tend to just make spells up on the spot. I don't think about it, and I can work energy through my hands as well as I can work it through a wand. And that's something that's really important for me to say. I am going to go more into this in the proper video on wands, but a wand is a tool to direct energy. It isn't something that you can use straight away and you will immediately know how to do it, because you need to learn how to manipulate and release your energy first before you can learn how to put it through a tool and then release it, if that makes any sense. So a lot of beginners jump into spell work and they think that a wand is what directs the energy for them, when actually a wand directs and focuses that energy. So if you aren't very good at using a wand, or if you aren't very good at energy manipulation yet, then using your hands could be a much simpler method of doing it. Not every magical tool is for everyone, so I would play around with wands. I would make your own if you're interested in trying one to start off with, just to see if you like them, because not everyone works with them, not everyone enjoys working with them. So a magical tool like a wand can be really useful, especially in higher ceremonial magics. For me, I personally don't use them as much as I used to, or at all anymore. So the next magical tool that a lot of people talk about is an Athame. Now this is my Athame. I've had this for quite a few years now. Now I'm not going to get this out of its case, and I am going to do a full video on Athames, but this is my personal Athame. An Athame is a ritual tool, a ritual knife that is completely blunt. It is not used for cutting anything. That is one of the biggest misconceptions. They are often considered to be a counterpart to a wand. They are both used for energy direction, but an Athame is also used for energy cutting, so something like a cord cutting work or a circle cutting, I will use an Athame. But honestly, my Athame mainly stays on my Cauldron altar. It doesn't really move from there because I just don't use them anymore. That is mainly because my path has changed. Now I mainly work lower magic, it's less ceremonial, it's more getting your hands dirty, you're doing everything with your hands. It's not so much using tools to do the work alongside you. So if you're not in a position to use an Athame or to purchase an Athame, because not everyone is, then you really don't need to worry about it. You do not need an Athame in your personal practice if you don't want an Athame. Now the next thing is a Bolin. Now a Bolin, if you don't already know, is a curved white-handled knife that is used for cutting herbs, and it's used for stripping wood and kind of really natural earthy things in spellwork and ritual. I don't actually have a Bolin, and I have never had one because I've never felt them to be necessary. I personally, if I'm going to be doing work with herbs, I use a kitchen knife. If I'm going to be stripping bark off wood, I tend to just use like a penknife or, you know, a sander. I don't generally go for a Bolin. Now, not everyone feels this way. Some people are really traditional and really enjoy working with Bolins. I know a lot of people, and I have some people that I know really well personally that love their Bolins. I personally have never really felt drawn to them and have never used them, and my personal practice has not suffered because of this. And that's really important because a lot of kind of beginner books, they say you need this, and then you can start practicing. And anyone that's been practicing for a while will go, you don't need that, or this, or that, or that, or that. You don't need it. You don't need anything. So the next item is a pentacle. Now, especially within Wicca, this is seen as really important, but unfortunately, it has kind of trickled over into witchcraft and become kind of a staple item that everyone has. Now, I do have a pentacle. It's used as a charm. It's not used in ceremony or ritual. And it's mainly used to kind of represent the 5 elements in Wiccan workings. And if you are a practicing witch rather than Wiccan, a pentacle isn't really necessary. As you can see, I always wear a necklace pentacle, but I don't necessarily use a standalone altar pentacle for my altars because I simply feel like I don't need them. And it's honestly just extra clutter for my already cluttered altars, so I just don't bother. So the next thing is a Book of Shadows. Now, I have talked a lot about Books of Shadows because I love them. You can't see them, but from there, the copper skull, all the way to the end of my bookcase is just Books of Shadows. I have a video on a tour of my Book of Shadows. If you're interested, I will put both of the links in the description box, and I will put it in the card that is gonna appear up here any minute, I know it. But a Book of Shadows is not actually necessary to be a practicing witch. You don't need one. They can be very useful though. So if you're in the broom closet and you don't necessarily want to have a written documentation of your magical practice in case someone finds it, you don't need a Book of Shadows. Honestly, you don't. You can use an online Book of Shadows. I used to use a diary as a Book of Shadows. I've also, when I had access to the internet, which wasn't at the start of my practice, this was like way later. So when I had access to the internet easily, like on a computer, like on a desktop computer, I used to use an online diary service. I don't even think those things still exist. But I used to use an online diary service to note down my magical practice, and that really worked. So if you can have like a Word document, or if you can like use the notes on your phone to be a Book of Shadows, you can do that instead. You do not need a super fancy leather-bound Book of Shadows to be an official practitioner. You don't need it. And if you do want a book, you can just buy a notebook. Just a cheap notebook works just as well. You don't need to be spending the money on a super fancy book unless you really, really want to. So the next thing is a cauldron. Now, I love cauldrons. This is one of the few items in this list that I actually still use really, really frequently. I think I have maybe like 4 cauldrons now of varying sizes and shapes, and I use them a lot. I use them for burning bay leaf wishes, I use them for burning petitions, I use them for burning loose incense, I use them for holding offerings and for scrying. So there's so many different things you can do with a cauldron, but they are definitely not necessary. So if you are a beginner and you don't know what to get, I would suggest skipping the cauldron for a while because they can be quite expensive. especially if you are younger and you don't have the savings for it. And they can be quite bulky and they're really obvious. So if you're in the broom closet, a cauldron might not be the best way to go. Now, another thing that is very commonly recommended for a beginner is a chalice. I actually have 5 chalices. One of them stores my crystals that was seen in my crystal tour. One of them is in my Bridget altar. One of them is underneath my coffee table. One of them is upstairs and the other is at the bottom of this bookcase. That just goes to show how often I use my chalice. Now, they are often used to hold water during ceremonies, especially in Wicca. They are used to hold liquid for workings. Now, if you are Wiccan, a chalice might be really important to your practice, but as a witch, they aren't half as important as they are to Wiccans. And so it's really important in all of this that you judge how important something is to you and to your personal practice. My personal practice is probably quite different from yours. This is just kind of how I perceive these tools and which ones I would recommend or not recommend for a practicing witch. So if you're Wiccan, these things have way more significance than if you're a witch. But as a witch, I personally don't use my chalice barely at all. I have them more as symbolic pieces on altars than I do for actual ritual work. So the next thing is candles. Now, this is another thing, you guys know, I love my candles. Candles are one of the main things that I use in ritual and spell work. I am very connected to the fire element. I love working with it. I've always loved working with it. And candles for me are a really great way of directing energy. I love being able to push the energy into the candle and have it manifest workings remotely. That's a really, really cool thing you can do. And so my home is literally stuffed to the brim of candles. I'm looking at the table that you are sitting on right now, and there are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 candles on it. That is an obscene number of candles for anyone to have. I love candles, and they definitely are something that I use in my personal practice, but they also aren't a requirement. If you aren't interested in candle magic, you want to work differently, you want to work more with the earth or more with water, or you want to do more spirit work, then candles simply aren't necessary. They are something that a lot of people use if they are interested in candle magic and fire magic. But if you're just starting out and you don't know whether or not you're going to want to use that type of magic, then candles really aren't necessary. So a lot of people I know work with candle magic, but a lot of people I know also don't like using candles in ritual, and that is really completely fine. So if you're new or if you can't burn things, you don't need to worry about not having candles, because believe me, they are not necessary. Your magic comes from you. It doesn't come from the tools that you are using. Along this lines is also incense. You walk into a witchcraft shop, first thing you see, incense, and a lot of it. I sell incense. I love incense. Is it necessary? No, it really isn't. So if you have pets or small children, if you have asthma, if you have allergies, if you aren't able to burn things, if you're in the broom closet, you don't need to worry about incense. It is not something that you need for your magical practice. It is something you can use if you want, but honestly really isn't necessary. So if you don't want to stink your house out with incense, you don't need to, and you are still perfectly valid as a practitioner. Now, the next thing on this list are essential oils. Now, in the modern age, I see a lot of people using a lot of essential oils for a lot of different things, and that is completely fine. It's great if you choose to use them and you enjoy using them, but believe me, they aren't necessary. They are very expensive. They can be potentially toxic to yourself, to animals, and honestly, I don't use very many essential oils in anything that I do besides in kind of blended oils, and I use them in sprays and whatnot. I don't generally use them. Some people have amazing success with aromatherapy and using essential oils in their magical practice. But if you don't know how to use them safely, if you don't really want to use them, you don't need to worry about it. I know that on like Instagram and Tumblr, essential oils seem to be literally everywhere, but they definitely aren't necessary. And it's definitely a more modern item that's been included into kind of witchcraft requirements, and it's definitely not a requirement if you don't want it to be. So the next thing is a cloak. Now, a cloak is something that is very commonly found. It's found in Druid tradition, it's found in Wiccan tradition. A lot of traditional pagans wear cloaks, and a lot of older witches wear cloaks. And I have a cloak, and I love my cloak, and I've done ritual and ceremony in my cloak. Is it necessary? Hell no, it definitely isn't necessary. Cloaks are something that is mainly found in religious celebration and in higher ceremonial magics. Some people go sky-clad to ritual and wear a cloak over the top to kind of have a little bit of decency, especially if you're doing kind of public rituals. But they definitely aren't a requirement. I don't wear my cloak barely ever anymore. I never really need to. My normal standard clothes work fine, and it's mainly something that has come from kind of Wiccan tradition. A lot of the time it is said in Wiccan books that you should be sky-clad or wearing a cloak for your rituals, and this isn't really necessary in witchcraft unless you want it to be. That's the most important thing. It's all about what you feel comfortable with, what you want to include in your magical practice. Now the last two things are crystals and herbs. I see it a lot where people are asking, I'm a new witch, what herbs and crystals do I have to have? And people have some really odd answers that vary a huge amount, and the reason they vary a huge amount is because it is entirely dependent on each individual practitioner. For me, the herbs I use the most are things like chamomile, jasmine, rose, nettle, sage, marjoram, rosemary. I use a lot of patchouli. I use lavender. I use a huge range of herbs. If you were to see my herb cabinet, you would be amazed as to how many herbs I could fit in a box, because I have literally hundreds of herbs. Does a normal person need that many herbs? Definitely not. I work a lot with herbs in my personal practice, and you may not want to work with herbs. Not everyone does. There are lots of different ways to practice. So if you are new, I would suggest not jumping in and buying every single herb you can see or that you can think of, because believe me, I did that when I first started and I still have some of them. I would never use them now because they're about 13 years out of date, but I have a lot of herbs that I bought at the very beginning and I've simply never used them. Same goes for crystals. Crystals can be really expensive, especially for the really good quality stuff. And honestly, they aren't necessary either. Not everyone works with crystals in their magic. I work with crystals way less than some other people I know, and I still have really successful magical practices. So honestly, if you are looking into crystals, I would start really basic. I would just start with clear quartz. It's reasonably priced. You can find it in a high grade for a reasonable price, and it's really easy to work with and attune with your desired intention. So I would personally only really say you need clear quartz unless you love crystals and you want to collect them and you want to have them all, because let's face it, they're kind of addictive to have. So that is the main things that I have seen beginner witches being told that they need in order to practice witchcraft. I do have a few extra things to say to this. And the first thing is that if you are a beginner and you are looking into the tools that you need to have as a beginner witch to start practicing, I would say do not buy anything except a good beginner book. I get it a lot. I literally got a message last night from someone who was asking me a beginner spell that they could try. And no matter how many times I told them that it is not really a good idea to start with spell work because you don't know how to get spells to work, they were adamant that as long as I told them a working spell, that they could do it. And this is something I see quite frequently, and it's especially seen on kind of forums online, is that people just want to jump in, they want to buy everything, they want to say every spell, they want to memorize everything they can, and honestly, take a step back. Take a breather. You have an entire lifetime to be doing spell work, to be collecting items. You don't need to do it all at the start. I would say that if you are a beginner, buy a really good beginner book. Everyone on this channel knows that my favourite book to recommend to beginners is Before You Cast a Spell by Carl McColman. And that's because I think I like his book so much because it literally is a no-nonsense approach to practical magic. It is a no-nonsense, no bullshit, no faff around book that is really good for getting to the core of magical practice without being swayed by questionable beliefs and by lots of items and lots of showery, because magic at its core is your energy and your intention. Everything else that we have, every wand, every Athame, every Bolin, every altar piece is simply a prop. And what I mean by that is that the practitioner is the driver of the magic. They are the person that pushes the energy out into the universe to receive a magical response. It's not your tools. You can have 15 wands and every crystal under the sun and hundreds of candles and loads of essential oils and this and that, but if you don't know how to manipulate your energy, if you don't know how to put your energy out into the world in a suitable way to receive a magical response, it doesn't matter how many props you have, it's not going to do anything. And that is really the nitty-gritty of this entire thing, is that they are props. They are things that put us in the right state of mind to undertake successful magic. But at the core of that, you still need to know how to practice successful magic in order to gain the magical response that you're after. So if you're new, I would genuinely suggest getting a really good beginner book and studying as much as you can. Learn lots of different paths, learn lots of different traditions to start off with. See what you like, see what you enjoy learning about the most. And then when you start actively practicing, if you feel that you are missing something in your practice, like a tool is missing from your kind of collection, then you can go out and purchase that tool and add it into your magical workings. But if you buy all of the tools but don't have any of the information that goes behind it, it's not going to do anything for your magical practice except make you really disappointed. I have met a lot of people who have told me that they bought a wand and they can't get anything to work. And I ask them what they are doing and how they are undertaking magical workings, and they are literally just reading some words in Latin out of a random spell book that they found online and hoping to gain a magical response. And this is not going to gain a magical response unless you know how magic works, why magic works, and how to release your energy appropriately. So all of these props are so wonderful to have. Believe me, my collection is huge. I have pretty much lost track of how many wands I have, how many cauldrons I have, how many candles I have. My herbs are like flowing out of cupboards and I've got crystals for days, but they aren't necessary. They're nice to have and I add them into my practice every now and then, but my core thing, the thing that every magical practitioner needs more than anything else, is their own energy, their drive, their intention, and their willingness to learn how to go about gaining successful results. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, feel free to give it a like. It really helps me to know which videos you like and which videos you don't like. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, video ideas, or just want to chit chat with the community down in the comment section, feel free to post a comment down below. I try to get back to as many people as I can, but I am slightly delayed because I'm getting so many comments. You guys are amazing. You put so many comments down there and I really do try to get back to as many people as I can, but it's taking me quite a while. And if you enjoy the magical content on this channel or in this video, feel free to hit subscribe. I post new videos every Wednesday and every Saturday at 6 PM, so there's always something new going on. And I'm also currently doing Q&As every month. So if you want to have a live chat with me, then feel free to join along for one of the Q&As. The people who subscribe will get notifications of when these videos are going up. So if you're interested in seeing more, I would suggest hitting subscribe, as it could go some other way to let you know when my new video is coming out. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you on either Wednesday or Saturday at 6 PM. Bye!